M.13 Solve a right triangle. So on this one we are going to put everything that we did in 11 and 12 together and just basically find everything that is missing. So it says solve the right triangle, and what happens is we know IH, so they are wanting us to find JH, or HJ, and they're wanting us to find IJ. And then we know that this is 60, this is 90, and we want to know the last angle. So usually what I start off with on these is find the one that you know two of first and to find the third one. And so on this we know the two angles, and so we would find the last angle, and all the angles in a triangle add up to be 180. And since this is a right triangle, we already know that 90 is already used of the 180. So these two have to add up to be 90, and 90 minus 60 is 30. Then just choose which one you're going to find. Are you going to find the green IJ, or are you going to find the yellow HJ? It doesn't matter because you're going to have to find both. And I'm going to label this A and this B just so I don't have to write as many letters. So I'm going to use the 60, and A is opposite the 60. This is the hypotenuse, and B is adjacent. So if I'm going to find IJ first, which is A, it would have, I need opposite, and I have hypotenuse, so I'm going to use sine, and that's going to be A over 2 square root of 31. Let's go ahead and set up B. B is adjacent, and I have hypotenuse. Adjacent and hypotenuse is cosine. So cosine 60 of B over 2 square root of 31. Sine 60 is square root of 3 over 2. And I just bring this down. And then cross multiply. Divide. The 2's will cancel, so I have square root of 93, which is A, which is IJ, so square root of 93. Cosine 60 is 1/2. Bring the B over to square root of 31 down, and then cross multiply. Divide by 2. The 2's cancel, so B is square root of 31. 31. Squeeze it. Okay. Alright, so on this, we know two sides, and let's find the third side first. So to find the third side, there's so many different ways that we can do it, but let's just use the Pythagorean theorem. We're going to call this x. Alright, so 3 square root of 14 squared plus x squared equals 2 square root of 42 squared. And grab a calculator. That's 126. Grab a calculator. 84. That is not right. 442. 168. Sorry. Subtract. Good grief. $42. And if we take the square root of 42, I suppose we're going to get the square root of 42. Okay, now to find Q and or R, let's just use the ones that they give us. This is opposite and hypotenuse and sine. So sine Q equals 3 square root of 14 over 2 square root of 42. If you plug that in the calculator to simplify, fraction 3 square root of 14 over 2 square root of 42, we get square root of 3 over 2. And if we use our cheat sheet, we know 60 gives us, sine 60 gives us square root of 3 over 2, so Q has to be 60. And if this is 60 and this is 90, then if I add those up and subtract from 180, we get 30. J and HJ. So if this is 59, this is 90, subtract from 180, or 90 minus 59, we get 31. So measure of angle H is 31, so I'm a third of the way finished. Then just choose. I'll choose IJ first using the 59, and they give us the 7. And IJ is adjacent to 59, and this is your hypotenuse. So we're going to use cosine. So cosine 59 equals adjacent, which we don't know, over hypotenuse, which is 7. And since 59 is not our 30, 45, or 60 angle, we're going to have to use the calculator. And if we know that we're going to have to use the calculator, you do not want to use the trig functions until the very, very end. And so if I put this over 1, we get A equals 7 cosine 59. Now you're going to get a calculator and do 7 cosine 59 and get 3.6 because we're running to the nearest tenth. And that is IJ. Okay, and then to get HJ, and this is still the hypotenuse, and we're going to call this B. So opposite and hypotenuse, so sine 59 equals opposite, which is B, over hypotenuse, which is 7. If I cross multiply, that 7 is going to go right there. So 7 sine 59. 6. There we go. Last one. Just trying to see. We're going to use the Pythagorean theorem on this one. The 8.8 is your hypotenuse. So 6.8 squared plus x squared, that's x, equals 8.8 squared. So 8.8 squared minus 6.8 squared equals 31.2. So x squared equals 31.2. So if I take the square root of that, and we're rounding to the nearest tenth, it's going to be 5.6, which is FH. Now on this, when you're finding the other angles, we are not going to use the 5.6 to get the other parts, because that is a rounded number, and if we take a number and do stuff with it and then round it again, we're going to start getting off some. So we are definitely going to use this 8.8 and the 6.8. If I'm looking at angle G, 6.8 is adjacent, and that's your hypotenuse, so we're going to use cosine again. So cosine of G equals our adjacent, which is 6.8 over 8.8. And you're going to get a calculator. You're going to do 6.8 divided by 8.8. You're going to get the answer, but you're not going to round that. You don't ever want to round until the very, very end. But I am going to write it down just so I can tell myself or show myself what I'm going to be doing after that. And so I'm going to write a few numbers down. And then I'm like, okay, how do I get 0.773 from cosine? And that's when you remember you use your inverse cosine of 0.773. So on my calculators, this is what you're going to do. Let me just a second. So your keystrokes are going to be second cosine, second, and then this button. And this button on top of it says ANS. And what you're doing, the second cosine gives you the inverse function, and then this right here is putting what we already have in the calculator as our answer, and then enter. So second cosine second answer equals 39.4, which is G. And then you can go ahead and do the 39.4 plus 90, and then subtract that from 180, and get 50.6.